The following story was related by a seaman to the Rev S.C.Abbott of America. Many years ago, when New Zealand was a land of uninterrupted heathenism, the ship in which I was a common sailor dropped anchor at a cautious distance from the shore, in one of the harbors of that island. We had been months upon the ocean without seeing any land. And when the sublime mountains and luxuriant valleys of that magnificent isle rose from the wide waste of waters before us, it was difficult to realize that we were not approaching some region of fairy enchantment. We soon, however, found that we were still in this world of sin and woe, for it so happened that there was a terrible fight between two war parties of the natives, raging at the very hour in which we entered the lovely bay. From the deck of our ship, we witnessed with awe the whole revolting scene: the fierce assault, the bloody carnage, the infuriated shrieks, the demoniac attitudes of those maddened savages, as they fell upon each other with a degree of fury which seemed worse than human. Often we saw the heavy club of the New Zealand savage fall upon the head of his antagonist, and as he fell lifeless to the ground, his head was beaten by reiterated blows till exhaustion satiated fury. This awful scene of savage life, as beheld from the deck of our ship, impressed even us unthinking sailors with emotions of deepest melancholy. In consequence of the war, or some other cause, no canoe from the shore approached our ship. As we were entirely destitute of wood, the captain sent a boat's crew with many cautions as to safety to the opposite side of the harbor to collect some fuel. I was sent with this party. We landed upon a beautiful beach, upon which a heavy surf was rolling. The savage scene we had just witnessed so filled us with terror that we were every moment apprehensive that a party of cannibals would fall upon us and destroy us. After gathering wood for some time, we returned to the boat and found to our dismay that the surf rolling in upon the beach had so increased that it was impossible to launch the boat. The sun was just setting behind angry clouds, which betokened a rising storm. The crested waves were rolling more and more heavily in from the ocean. A dark night was coming on, and savage warriors, their hands already dripping with blood, were everywhere around. We were all silent. No one was willing to speak of his fears, and yet no one could conceal them. Before we left the ship, the captain had informed us that an English missionary had erected his hut about 2 miles from the place where we were to land. The captain had visited him about 2 years before in his solitary home, and it was then very uncertain whether he would be able to continue in his post of danger. We immediately resolved to endeavor to find the missionary, and to seek such protection as he could afford us for the night. Increasing masses of clouds rolled up and spread over the sky, and as we groped our way through the deep and tangled forest, darkness like that of Egypt enveloped us. After wandering about, we hardly knew where, for some time, we heard the loud shouts of savages either in conflict or in revelry. Cautiously we approached the sounds, till we beheld a large party gathered around their fires with the hideous trophies of their recent battle and exulting over their victory. We thought it wise to keep as far from them as possible, and again turned from the light of their fire into the dark forest, where we could hardly see an arm's length before us. We at length came upon a little path, and slowly following it, stumbling in the darkness over rocks and roots of trees, we came in view of the twinkling light of a lamp. I, with another one of the party, was sent forward to reconnoiter. We soon found that the light proceeded from a hut, but whether from the night fire of a savage New Zealander or from the lamp of the Christian missionary, we knew not. And few can imagine the anxiety with which we cautiously moved along to ascertain how the fact might be. Our hopes were greatly revived by the sight of a glazed window, and when, through that window, we saw a man in the garb of civilized life, with his wife and one child, kneeling in their evening prayers, our joy knew no bounds. Waiting a few moments till the prayer was closed, we entered the door, and though the surprise of the inmates was very great in seeing 2 white sailors enter their dwelling, we were most hospitably received. The missionary immediately lighted his lantern, and proceeding with us, led the rest of our party to his humble abode. We all slept upon his floor for the night. Weary, however, as I was, I found but little rest. I thought of my quiet New England home, from which I had been absent but a few months. I thought of my mother, and her anxiety about her sailor boy in this his first voyage. The scene was indeed a novel one to me. The swelling winds of the tempestuous night, the wild scenes of man and nature all around us, the vivid image of the bloody conflict, with the remembrance of its hideous and fiend-like outcries, all united so to impress my spirit that I found but little repose. My companions, however, perhaps more accustomed to danger and perhaps less addicted to thought, were soon soundly asleep. Early in the morning, a party of warriors came to the missionary's hut in search of us, having somehow ascertained that a boat's crew were on the shore. The missionary and his wife, both in countenance and manner, manifested the deepest anxiety for our safety. The savages were imperious and rude, and it seemed to me then that nothing but the restraining power of God preserved this family uninjured in the midst of such cruel and treacherous men. While they had been somewhat subdued in spirit by the kindness, the meekness, and the utter helplessness of the missionary's family, they considered us sailors fair game for plunder and abuse. By the most earnest solicitations on the part of the missionary, they were induced to spare us. The missionary accompanied us to our boat, and we had for our retinue a troop of rioting and carousing savages, brandishing their bloody war clubs over our heads to convince us that we were in their power. A walk of 2 miles conducted us to the beach. It was a fearful walk, and the watchful anxiety of our friend proved that he considered our danger to be great. When we arrived at the beach, some of the natives manifested great reluctance to let us go. Some took hold of our boat to draw it further upon the land, while they seemed to be earnestly arguing with the rest upon the folly of permitting our escape. At length, however, they yielded to the remonstrances of the missionary, and aided us in launching our boat through the now subsiding surf. As we rowed from the shore, and I looked back upon that devoted man, standing upon the beach in the midst of these rude savages, and thought of his return to his solitary home, and of the days, weeks, and months he must there pass in thankless labors, I thought that his lot was, in a worldly point of view, one of the hardest I had ever known, and I wondered that any man could be so hard-hearted as to speak in terms of reproach and point the finger of scorn towards the Christian missionary. In my last voyage, about 2 years ago, I again entered this same harbor. It is now called the Bay of Islands, and is one of the most beautiful places in natural scenery on the surface of the globe. I could hardly credit my eyes as I looked out upon a handsome and thrifty town, with many dwellings indicative of wealth and elegance. There were churches of tasteful architecture, and school children with their slates and books. And there were to be seen New Zealand families dwelling in cheerful parlors, sanctified by morning prayers and evening hymns. The untiring labors of the missionary had, through God's blessing, created a new world, and the emotions of deep compassion with which I had regarded him, when we left him on the beach alone with the savages, were transformed into sentiments of admiration and almost envy in view of his achievements. All other labors seemed trivial compared with his. And then I felt, and still feel, that if any man can lie down with joy upon a dying bed, it is he who can look back upon a life successfully devoted to raising a savage people to the comforts, refinements, and virtues of a Christian life.